Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. In today's episode of the Power of Design podcast, I will be talking to Anna Lynch. Anna is a structural engineer, owner and CEO of Lynch Mykins Engineering in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm inspired and energized by Anna's story, an ability to make things happen in her own terms. During our conversation, we talk about believing in yourself, taking massive action to build your own business, and investing in people to create an engaging and fun workplace. This is my conversation with Anna. Anna, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
Doing good.
Anna, you are the owner of a successful structural engineering firm working with clients nationwide on multiple project types. What does it take as a female business leader being in a male-dominated industry?
What it takes is a lot of grit and perseverance to be a woman-owned firm in a male-dominated industry, because sometimes it's hard to gain respect. I feel like a lot of times male opinions are just assumed to be correct, and females are assumed to be let's just ignore it. So
Sure.
You have to have a lot of grit and perseverance to get your voice heard a little bit more than the males in the industry.
Yeah, and that's a topic that lately it's been more addressed. I think that has always been there in the workplace, but I don't know if it's technology or more culture. People just exposed to a lot more situations and understanding and how things work, that we're getting to a point where I think that's the real value of diversity, to get all those points of views across on the table.
Yeah, and in structural engineering, I mean, the industry hasn't really changed in 100 years. I mean, the lack of diversity is pretty eye-opening. I mean, if you look at all of the really high design, kind of impactful buildings in the US even, and you look at who the structural engineer was of record, it is a white male.
Yeah.
And because of that, because of the lack of diversity, I think our industry hasn't changed much. So I think being a female leader for a structural engineering firm allows me to bring that diversity to really impact the industry moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm really excited and happy for what you're doing and the future that you're gonna create, not only for you, but for other women that are behind you and waiting to get for all those opportunities. Anna,
Right.
Tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up in Iowa on a farm in the middle of nowhere. The closest grocery store was about 30 minutes away.
Wow.
Yeah. Raleigh is a big city to me. I mean, the town's population was about 5,000, and it's just farmland everywhere. That's the industry there.
And how long did you stay there?
I was there for 18 years. I grew up on the farm, and then I moved on to Wyoming for college.
And what did you go to college for?
I went to college for architectural engineering. I was really deciding between being an architect and being a structural engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I interned for an architecture firm in high school for a couple years, just doing AutoCAD. And there was always the guy that came with the Mercedes for the meetings. And I'm like, what does that guy do? And they said, that's the structural engineer. And I'm like,
wow,
I might want to do that.
That's a good indication of a career path.
Yeah.
What car you're driving.
So that passed, working with the architecture firm, I really knew that I wanted to be in building design.
Yeah.
That's when I found out that there was a degree in architectural engineering. So you could learn the architecture side, the MEP side, and the structure side just in buildings. And the University of Wyoming had the cheapest architectural engineering program in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I went there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first job.
My first job was actually with this company. I graduated in 2003 with an architectural engineering degree, and I interned in Austin, Texas with an architecture firm for a summer during college, and it was too hot. And I realized that's kind of when I was meant to be a structural engineer because of my analytical side.
Yeah.
And my sister lived in Boston. I'm like, that's too cold. I don't want to live in California because of the seismic design. And so there was this southeast pocket that I just really didn't know anything about. And so my senior year of college, I flew out to Charlotte for spring break.
Yeah.
And went door to door to all the structural engineering firms. This was back in the day when you fax your resume. Mm-hmm. And Stroud Pence in Raleigh was one of the firms I just swung by and walked in with my resume. And that's, I went in, and actually Dave Mykins, my business partner, was the one that was running the Raleigh office for Stroud Pence. And he was in the office.
Yeah.
I went in and I said, hey, I'm Anna Lynch. Here's my resume. Can I take you to lunch? And he's like, no, I'm not hiring. And I said, oh, I didn't say I was looking for a job. I just said, here's my resume.
That's
like,
right.
Let me take lunch.
Yeah.
And it's like, fine, you can take me to lunch, And so we went to lunch, and I guess I really sold him. And I went back to Wyoming, and he sent me an offer. And the reason why I took the job here in Raleigh, I had a couple other offers across North Carolina, was because of my immediate connection with Dave Mykins. Mm-hmm. I really respected him, and I felt like he respected me. And I feel like he could have, I felt like he really could have taken me places. So I started with Raleigh and the Raleigh Stroud Pence office in 2003.
Nice. So you started that job and you start working on, different type of projects. Tell me a little bit about your career within that firm. I guess you start doing basic drafting and you start engaging into other more important tasks.
Yeah, actually, it's quite funny. The first day I came to work, they basically threw the building code in front of me and they said, read it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I read it for about a week, I think. And I thought, oh, God, this job is so boring. I don't know if I'm going to survive.
Oh, yeah.
And then my third week, they gave me a coffee shop that was going to be built in the Outer Banks. Talk about one of the most difficult projects,
oh my gosh,
right
yes.
off the water. Yeah. And they let me run with it. And that's kind of what I loved so much about Stroud Pence from the beginning was they let me learn every aspect of structural engineering, mm-hmm. not just the analytical side. It was really, I got to work on the fee proposal. I knew what the budget was. They introduced me to the client. And this is when I'm 21.
Wow.
They were really trusting me to learn every aspect of how to run a project.
Yeah, that's very important. Usually any career, I think in the design world, depending on the size of the firm, sometimes you get just relegated to do certain kind of task over and over again. And it's been 5 years and you haven't talked to a client. So I think that was really good. Understanding from their part that you had the potential to give you access to those opportunities. And then from your side to embrace those opportunities because sometimes people don't do that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it did help further my career quicker because of that ability, I believe, because in 2008, when the economy started going downhill, the Raleigh office for Stroud Pence was up to 12 people. And when I started, we were at 4. So we were growing, which was really exciting. But in 2008 to 2010, we got down to 4 people. And I asked myself, I'm like, why am I one of the last people standing here?
Right.
What is it about me at this point in my career? Because I had just passed the SE. There was a lot more qualified people that were working there that were getting laid off. And that's when I realized really kind of a talent that set me aside from above other people in the industry, which was my ability to communicate and to connect with clients and with other consultants and with contractors and all of that. So in 2000, let's see, what year was it? It's 2010 when we were down to 4 people. And that's when I clicked on the idea behind Lynch Mykins. It was really the business plan that I was thinking about starting and leaving in 2010.
Yeah. So at that point, you have been with that firm with how many years? Seven?
Yeah.
And what do you think was the breaking point in your mind when you said, I need to start my own firm? What triggered that decision?
So I felt like the business was not being run well, to be honest. And when you see a company as a 20-some-year-old go from 12 to 4 and everyone's getting laid off, you're like, okay, why am I on this sinking ship?
Yeah.
Right? Do I want to wait till they decide to let me go and it goes under? Or do I just want to go and start my own thing?
Right.
I felt like it was a great opportunity to just kind of say, all right, the economy's not great, but if I can manage it, this is a great time to start a business. So I did end up telling them that I was leaving. And they said, well, why don't you run the Raleigh office? And I thought to myself, well, great. They're going to pay me to see if the idea I have behind a structural engineering firm can work. Right. And I said, I promised myself I would basically write my business plan, run the Raleigh office, implement it for 5 years and see if it was successful and get all the training I can possibly get out of those 5 years on how to run a business, because the Raleigh office was a separate financial entity. Mm-hmm. So they were basically giving me free business training.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I did. So I built the Raleigh office I let one person go. Like they promoted me to run the office and I went into this office and I said, you're fired.
Yeah.
Because she didn't match what I was trying to build.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Get the right people on the bus.
That's right. So I don't have any fear. It's a problem.
Yeah.
And the Raleigh office, in 5 years, we were the most financially stable office and also the largest in the company. That's when I knew what I was really trying to create really worked. But it gave me that 5 years of trial by fire. Yeah. Which was really great. So then in 2016, I told them that I was leaving Stroud Pence.
So I guess you went through all that cycle again. And I think that, all this story, it's always telling about you get a learning curve about something, you embraced it, you grow to a certain level, and then you want to jump again.
Right.
And then you want to do it again. So before we go to that next chapter, I'd like to know, when you start discovering what it really means to be a business person, not only a structural engineer, because, that's the trade, that's what you're selling, that's the skill. However, in order to sell that, there's these many other set of skills, connecting with clients, communication, branding, marketing, finances. How did you start getting in I will say in love with all those other aspects, because you really need to love it and they're not easy to love.
Yeah, I agree. It actually was a book that I read. I'm a little obsessed with constantly growing. Everyone here always says that they say I'm an insanely curious. That's what everyone says. So yeah. I'm constantly reading, constantly listen to podcasts. What can we do? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily just in business or structural engineering. I'm obsessed with wellness and all kinds of stuff. And so I was reading a book. It's called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. Yeah. And it's about basically our industry and several other kind of analytical industries, how if we just continue on this path without realizing the human side of what we do, we will become obsolete. Engineering, software engineering, all of that, because computers will be able to do what we can do. Sure. And the human side of what we do hasn't been recognized or implemented too much in the AEC industry. So I read that book in 2008, reread it in 2010. And a large aspect of what I was thinking was, if I can take the thought behind that and take my human skills, which is emotional intelligence, right, and implement that to create a business, that is really exciting to me. So I am like the idea person, and then I love executing to see if it works. Right. I love the challenge. Sure. So I just continue to challenge myself. I get bored very easily.
Yeah.
And I think the ability to say, all right, I'm a structural engineer. You want me to run an office? I have no idea what I'm doing. My brain says, yay, challenge.
Sure.
Let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
I just love risk.
Yeah.
And engineers are typically risk averse, but it just like, it excites me. It's what gets me up every day is risk and passion behind the challenge. So I think that's really what drives me to consistently change my path.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So you're at this point where the Raleigh office is in a really good place, and you feel that you just hit a ceiling again, and you decide to leave that firm. So what happened?
So Stroud Pence had 13 owners. I was one of them, a very, very small percentage. And with, leaving them was very, very hard because they did a lot for me. And Dave Mykins was one of the reasons why I felt really bad. I just didn't know if I could actually leave because he did give me a lot of opportunity to do things that I wasn't necessarily qualified to do.
Yeah.
And so I went to Dave Mykins. He was the first person I went to and said, I think it's just time for me to take the idea and the business plan that I had created in Raleigh and take it out on my own because I felt like I was being held back because I really felt like this was a great idea. And if I didn't have 12 other owners fighting me along the way, it would be a lot less stressful.
Right.
And I'm not easily controlled. I'm a challenger in general. And the owners in Stroud Pence weren't necessarily open to challenge, to say the least. And Dave Mykins, that was like a Friday. I gave, a month notice. And he called me on Sunday and he said, I want to go with you.
Wow.
And he'd been with the firm for 30 years.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was the CEO of Stroud Pence. And he said, I'll do everything you don't want to do. And I feel like you're the ship I want to be on. This ship might sink without you. And so if you're going to start a new one, I want to be on that one. And that's when I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we went to Stroud Pence and said, we're leaving. And they gave us an opportunity to acquire Stroud Pence. And they had been in business at that point for 45 years. I was thinking I was going to start a firm where maybe I didn't make any money for a couple of years with one employee, which was Dave Mykins.
Yeah.
And in the end, we made an offer and I did a presentation to all the owners of Stroud Pence. And I said, this is my business plan. Okay. We're going to be engineers with communication skills, and either you're on the ship or you're off the ship.
Right.
Because we're going forward with this idea, and it's nothing personal. It's just, this is the way we're going. So do not sell to me if you don't want to be on the ship, because if you sell to me, I will let you go if you're not on the ship. And I thought, man, there is no way they're going to sell to me. There's absolutely no way. I walked out of that conference room and that's not going to happen. And they walked out, it was a lot of hours, but they walked out and they said, it's yours. So I went from making maybe 0 employees to 32.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So how did you handle all the complexity of understanding, all the processes, finances, software, HR? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's really quite funny because I actually Googled how to be a CEO. I went to Barnes & Noble and I'm like, okay, MBA, I need to get one in like 3 months. Because when we finally said, okay, we're making a deal, and then to close on by acquiring Stroud Pence took about 3 months, which was very fast. And luckily I was pretty ingrained in the community. So I had really strong connections with very educated people that were very helpful to me. I had bankers, I had CPAs, I had lawyers, I had, just these people that I really trusted.
Yeah.
And so as I was going through the acquisition, I had like those trusted advisors that were helping me for basically free.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of research. I joke that I got an MBA in 3 months, but I really I really
You
did.
did. That's the amazing thing about technology. We have access to any information for free.
And people.
Yeah.
I mean, people are so helpful if you just admit you don't know.
Sure.
And that's what I'm really good at. I just would sit next to people and say, I'm taking you to lunch. I don't know how to even figure out book value. Like, what's book value? What's goodwill? Like, the whole acquisition process was way more overwhelming than actually running the business.
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain level of humility to ask the question and say, I don't know this thing. Sometimes we miss a lot of opportunities because we just don't ask for it.
Yeah.
And just having the willingness to ask, that's half of the battle right there. Because in general, people want to help others. And when people see you taking a risk and believing in yourself and trying to do something, and they know you're honest and you're a good person, they want to help. They want to be part of that.
Yeah, I think ego is one of the biggest hurdles for engineers, because we're told our whole lives that we're the smartest. You should be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor.
Yes.
You're the smartest. You should do that.
That's right.
So ego tends to hold them back. And that's one thing I never really had, because I wasn't the smartest. Yeah. I didn't get the Ivy League degree. I mean, no one even knew the University of Wyoming existed.
Sure.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
That's amazing. So tell me about your business today. What kind of projects do you guys work on? I love to learn about the culture, about how you run the company.
Yeah. So culture is definitely number one. You can see from our website, our people are everything.
Yeah.
You can't go to our website and see every project we've ever done, because I don't believe that that's really the most important thing that we do. So the culture is engineers that can take the mask off when they come into work. I mean, I wanted to create an environment where you can just be yourself. Historically, we were told that when you walk in the door to work, you got to have your suit on, you got to be serious and be business all the time, professional. And I'm just not that way. I am very authentic. If people don't like me, or if they don't like what I say or what I wear or any of it, I just don't care.
Sure.
And so that bled into, when I was building the Raleigh office for Stroud Pence, it kind of bled into my employees, and it gave them this interesting freedom. Because they're like, oh, that's who she is. This is who I am. And I respect her, so I can be myself.
Right.
And so I created that culture. So everyone here is super unique and kind of quirky. And we promote that as something that's just awesome about them. And we just constantly tell them how awesome they are. Yeah. No matter how different they are.
Sure.
So I would say our culture is really vulnerability and authenticity.
Oh, that's huge. And I think we're going through an inflection point in terms of workplace, because traditionally workplace, it's been seen as this building where you go and you are a different person and you behave certain way. And when you go home, then you're who you are. And that's ridiculous. Like, work-life balance doesn't exist. You're a human everywhere since you wake up until you go to sleep. You're a person, and you have dreams, and you're sad sometimes and you're happy sometimes. And that doesn't change because you're working. And I think we have been trained to believe that when you go to work, you have to become this robot or part of a machine, where you just have to perform, limit yourself on that task and forget about everything else. And that's going away. Intuitively, you have been sensing that and behaving like that, giving others permission to do the same.
Right. I call it work-life integration.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. There is no balance.
Correct.
Yeah. But as far as project types, we're all over the place. We chase clients, not projects. Again, because we want to work with people that we love and we want them to love us. So we want to work with clients that we feel like they're family.
Yeah.
So we're all over the place. I mean, we're doing the new Raleigh Civic Tower. It's a 20-story tower in downtown Raleigh. And that started from, I hung out with some friends when I was in my early 20s. We'd go camping every weekend and all this stuff. And one of those guys worked for the city of Raleigh. And he was like, I'm going to put out an RFP for architects. Who do you think I should give the project to? And I said, you should put out the RFP as structural lead.
Yeah.
And he's like, can I do that?
Oh my God.
I don't know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So he did. And I went to the pre-proposal meeting and I was the only one there.
That's awesome.
And so we won that. And then we just built this great solid foundation with the city of Raleigh. You know, we connected with them on a whole different level. And they're like, wow, we love your culture. We love your people. You've put the people that get along with our people. You know, there's no fighting. And because of all those years of building that relationship, we won this tower, which is our first tower that's going to be built by Lynch Mykins in downtown Raleigh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you think there is a need for more diversity in the structural engineering industry?
Yes, absolutely. You know, like I said earlier, because structural engineering has always been very, very much the same, we have the lack of diversity has given us a lack of ideas, a lack of an ability to change, a lack of opinions, a lack of ideas, a lack of perspective.
Sure.
And I believe that the more diverse structural engineering becomes, we will become better.
Sure.
We will not become obsolete. So the way I see it is the more diversity I can get at Lynch Mykins, the more we're going to be ahead of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have think tanks at Lynch Mykins. I've created that idea, and it's basically a brainstorming as a group that you volunteer for, and you can create any topic. And so everyone's required to be in one or start one. And I collect those ideas. They present to me every month, and we brainstorm together, like, how do we implement them? And we take 50% of ideas every month, implement them, knowing that a lot of them are going to fail. And then they fail sometimes, and sometimes they make a huge impact. And they're crazy ideas, like just completely outside the box. And the engineers love it because they're like, wow, this lady's crazy. Yeah. She'll do anything. But I tell everyone when I interview them, I was like, I love change. Like, change is exciting to me.
Sure. And well, I think that what you're implementing is flexing their thinking, because, sure, you know, when you're performing at your professional abilities, there is just a set of constraints that we have to perform by. You know, there are these rules, there is the building codes, there is gravity, and you have to comply to that. But when you get on a setting where you can stretch your thinking, that's only positive, because it's taking your mind going somewhere else that it haven't been before.
That's right.
And because of that, you can bring that new thinking back to the constraints and find new, different ways to solve problems.
That's right.
What do you think is the future of the construction industry in general? You know, design and construction, you know, there is a lot of technology, there is 3D printing, there is BIM technology, virtual reality. You know, there are a lot of things that are buzzwords in the construction industry. How do you see the design and construction industry evolving in the future?
I think the biggest thing I would like to see is actually building buildings from a 3D model. The fact that we are still making 2D drawings is really kind of mind-blowing to me.
Yes.
And there's a lot of coordination issues between that, because we're bringing these young folks into our industry and they live and breathe in 3D. And then we're trying to back train them on how to communicate in 2D, which is kind of against the future.
Sure.
So I think the biggest change is going to be us actually being able to construct off of our 3D models. Now, if virtual reality is part of that, that'd be phenomenal. But I think that that's unfortunately very far away. I would like to kind of be the leader of that maybe someday, but we got to get the contractors and the owners on board. And part of what I do is I sit in front of the people that we can make a change with. It's like getting in front of the right people for them to realize that they can lead the change. And part of that is persuasion and passion, right? And what I'm passionate about is actually not having to train everyone back to 2D.
Yeah.
So I am sitting in front of owners, developers, and I'm like, you can do this. You can be the leader of the change.
That's right.
And I traveled all over the world actually last year, kind of communicating that to some of the top leaders in the industry that can lead that. And they have the why nots, a lot of why nots. And I love to challenge them.
Yeah.
So I'm on the lookout for that first project where we can actually do that.
Sure.
But that's the change is I think structural engineers actually have a voice.
Yeah.
Now we were kind of just in the background. We were brought in late before, and now we're kind of challenging that. We're saying, hey, we know the owners, we're talking to the contractors, we're talking to the whole team because we know how to communicate. And I think that that's going to be a huge change. Again, like I said earlier, technology could take our jobs, right?
Yep.
And so if we can have that human connection, that's really what we're going to be selling in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think the breakthrough on your perspective is when you really start understanding structural engineering as the bones and the architecture might be the skin and everything you see, but without the bones, you're nothing. But if you start understanding the bones as the design piece of it, and when you can prove you can use certain kind of cantilevers or gymnastics, and then you wrap it in pretty finishes, that's a powerful project right there.
Yeah.
But the structural engineering will be the origin of that. It's not an answer to the architect. Is the design premise, and you work with the other design professionals to make it better.
It's so much more collaboration than we ever have done, obviously, as structural engineers. I mean, through my 17 years, I wasn't even at the table at kickoff meetings, and now we are. And that's kind of pushing for us to be a part of that collaboration from the very beginning with the CM, with the architect, with the MEP, all of them, and just sit at a table.
It makes sense even from a financial standpoint, because foundation is expensive, excavation is expensive, structure is expensive. And when you can be at the table providing feedback, understanding ideas, you can really guide not only the design experience, but also the financial performance of the projects.
And I think historically, we weren't at the table because we didn't know how to collaborate. Structural engineers would be at the table and they'd say, no, we can't do that. And the architect would just kind of cringe.
Sure.
And so there was this history of structural engineers not having that ability to communicate.
Yeah.
And so architects were like, okay, let's just not bring them in. So we were kind of scarred of years of doing that.
I know. Well, I feel that as an architect, like my vision of structural engineers in general is that they're going to over-engineer everything by like 50 times because they're scared of their design is not going to work. So it's going to be very expensive. So everything is possible, but they're going to make it very expensive.
Right. Being able to communicate what you really can do versus what you can afford is very important.
Yeah.
And making sure that the architect feels like their design is being supported and heard.
Sure.
That's talent. So
that's awesome. So my last question is about design, and it's mainly because, I'm talking to you because of your website. That's how I started looking at, I saw your LinkedIn, I saw the website, and I was like, this website, this is not a normal structural engineer. Like, they don't pay attention to culture like this. What's going on here? And that's how we got connected. So I'm always very passionate about design. And that's why the podcast is called The Power of Design, because in my mind, the power of design is a teamwork. I cannot do it on my own. We just go as far as drawing. Somebody needs to build it. Somebody needs to provide the budget for it. Somebody's having a financial transaction. So I'd like to know from your perspective, how does the power of design impact what you do and who you are?
Yeah. And actually, the power of design really defines my brand, actually. Because of my history in architectural engineering and kind of wanting to be an architect, and also my right brain side, which made me want to be an architect, and then my left brain side made me want to be an engineer, right? So when I was acquiring the firm, I thought, man, I can use my creative side to really develop a structural engineering firm with a great brand, and then actually create brand awareness behind that. And I think in the AEC industry, that kind of gets lost. Because structural engineers, for instance, think about only buildings. They don't realize that everything they do, everything they put out there, all their PR, all their websites and materials and everything is representing them to actually match what the building may be.
Yeah.
Right. And so structural engineering has been again, the same for 100 years, the same dark blue color and this, and just the same thing over and over and over again. So when I bought the firm, I actually was very heavily involved in the design behind Lynch Mykins and the brand. And that's when I realized it's something I absolutely really love. It was just such a fun experience to come up with the logo and the colors and everything. And then I realized, my passion for design is really important to me. And I kind of shut that off for a long time. And then once the light switch went on, I could do everything.
Right.
And I can change it whenever I want. And we can spend money on things that can really represent us really well.
Yeah.
So the website, it was very expensive.
Sure.
But it really has, again, from your standpoint, really put us out there as a firm that is very different and understands the power of design.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the magic to me is when you have an idea in your mind, you know what you have, and somehow you're able to communicate it through graphics, digital media, words. And when other people get it, that's what to me, it's the power of design. Oh my God, this thing was in my brain as an abstract idea. And somehow it went through all these steps and other people get it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I know.
It feels so good too.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. I get up every day and if I get a call from you and you're like, wow, your website's so great. I'm like, oh my gosh, he gets it. This is so amazing.
Yeah, I know.
It's just and the ability to actually create that, at the age of 35, to create a brand and create a business that represents everything I've always dreamed of.
Sure.
Behind the business idea of Lynch Mykins is really mind blowing and just so exciting.
Yeah. I think you're experiencing what few people in the world experience, and is you're having the opportunity to live your life at your full potential.
Right.
And a lot of people don't do it. One, because they don't have access to it. They might live in countries or places where you just can't. And some other people, they have the platform, but they just don't know how to do it, or they're scared to do it. So, I'm really happy about, knowing about you and meeting you, because what you're doing, it's giving me a lot of energy and inspiration to do my own thing and convince myself, well, if she did it, I'm going to do it.
You can do it.
I know. It's an inspiration.
Yeah. It's funny because you gave me the question, what do I actually do here? What is my role?
Yeah.
And I thought about that, man. I chewed on that for so long because that's such a hard question to answer. But I think my answer would be, I'm the head coach like I am the coach that thinks that we can do anything and everything.
Yeah.
Like I feel like everything that's unachievable is achievable. If someone says you can't do it, I'm like, get out of the way. That's just my personality. I've been doing it since day one. I feel like since the day I was born, my mom's like, oh, geez, here we go. So it brings a lot of excitement. But that's what drives me every day, is just that ability to really lift people up,
Sure.
and say, you can do anything, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, Anna, this is the end of our time. I really want to thank you for your time today. I'm really inspired and energized by your story. Just keep doing what you're doing 100 times better. And I look forward to stay in touch and get to meet you sometime in person.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and Osa Studio at osastudio.com and follow us on Instagram at The Power of Design Podcast. Thank you.